Hello and welcome, everybody. I think we are good to go. We have joined the session on time, 1 o'clock. Good to see, unfortunately, no faces, but lots of names on the screens and a high number of people in the session. So welcome. And I think a first sort of official in-person welcome to Milpark and the first of a couple of sessions at our Milpark O Week that has commenced this week. My name's Leon Gazet du Chatelier. Don't worry about having to repeat or pronounce that. You can just call me Leon. I'm Chief People Officer at Milpark, and I'm also here today to facilitate hopefully an interesting conversation and introduction, I suppose, from Milpark as an organization, but specifically with our Exco team, at least some of our Exco team, which are joining in the session today. We can get the full team involved, but we've got a couple of the team here to be part of the conversation. So firstly, I think it's a privilege to welcome you to Milpark. And I think for some of you new students, so may have never been a part of the Milpark in the past, we've also got some returning students in the session. So not necessarily new to Milpark, but the first time probably joining a conversation like today. And yeah, it's a privilege for us to welcome you. It's something, this time of year, I think being involved in education, it's always exciting. It's a mixture of excitement and nerves when we welcome all the new students to the organization. So I hope after today's session, you're going to have a bit more insight into how we as the leadership team at Milpark think about what is going to be your experience at Milpark, how we think about sort of the value proposition that we have for you. We're also going to have some calls to action for you as students joining Milpark, things to be thinking about as you embark on your journey with us. And so that's all going to come up in part of the conversation today. What I will also say is we feel like as an institution, Milpark's been around now over 25 years, but we've gone through a really very exciting period of change over the last couple of years. And I think as a leadership team, I'm speaking on everyone's behalf, but we're very excited about the change we've been through and the kind of the future we're going into as an organization. And now you are all a part of that. And so we're excited to share, I suppose, some of the insights and the thinking behind that change, and hopefully also articulate how you're going to experience that change as a student at Milpark. So it's meant to be a conversation. I've got a series of questions for everybody. But we'll see whether some of those lead. We've also got a chat that you can participate in. If you've got any specific questions or comments, or if you just want to give some high fives or applause, feel free to do so. We've got a few people monitoring the questions, so we'll either answer those as they come up, or someone will bring it up and raise it to my attention so we can discuss it. There might also be some opportunity at the end of the session to ask those questions. So I'm going to start off. I've introduced myself. I'm head of people at Milpark, but I was an academic for over 10 years. I taught in one of the schools, now the School of Professional Accounting in Milpark. So I've been a teacher for most of my professional career, but now I head up people and our employee experience at Milpark. And as I said, facilitating the conversation today. I'm going to hand over next to Andrew, our CEO, just to introduce himself. He's got to say more than I'm Andrew, the CEO. So let's see what he adds to that before he passes on to someone else.
Hey guys, it's really good to be here just to talk to everybody about Milpark. Yeah, so I'm Andrew. I'm the CEO of Milpark, but actually in a lot of ways, I'm also just an academic at heart. I spent a good portion of my life teaching management, accounting, and finance. So that's my roots. And just maybe just by way of a request, we're all looking at these round circles on the screen, which is quite disconcerting. I used to tell my students, just give us some reactions, thumbs ups, so we don't feel like we're talking into the void here. But yeah, hopefully we have a good session today, and we can kind of get to know us and the business that we're kind of trying to shepherd into the future of education.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll hand over next to Marilise.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It is really such a nice opportunity for me to also spend some time with all of you and with my team, and just to introduce us also to you here at the start of a new academic year. So I've been around since 2010 at Milpark Education. I've started my journey, what at that time was in the School of Financial Planning and Insurance. And I've played various roles within Milpark, and currently I'm the Chief Academic Officer. And it's a real privilege for me to just work on the academic side, support you as students, and support our academic staff.
Thank you, Marilise. I'll hand over next to Ron.
Hi, everyone. Ron Pillett here. I am Chief Marketing Officer like Andrew and Leon. I was, well, I suppose, first of all, a student 24 years ago. So scary to say that sometimes, but I can still get a sense of the excitement I felt at the start of that journey. So I was a student 24 years ago, and then after I kind of qualified, I also transitioned into a teaching role. So I have pretty much been in education for most of my life. Very awesome space to be in. And yeah, the first O week that we're having at Milpark, so just exciting to be involved with it and see how it unfolds. So welcome, everyone. And you'll be hearing a bit from me throughout today's session.
Thank you, Ron. And up next, and last but not least, in terms of who's here today from Exco, Leanne.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm super excited to be part of the O Week and the O Week session. Like Marilise, I'm part of the furniture at Milpark. I've been with Milpark for 15 years, mostly in the front end of the business. And one of my big chores is heading up the support or the student engagement hub, which during the week you'll hear a little bit more about in terms of non-academic support. Marilise's team supports from an academic perspective, but a big portion of my team will be supporting you from a non-academic perspective. But yeah, this is a big journey. Welcome, and exciting times. Thanks, Leon.
No, great. I still see a few people joining. We got a nice number of people walking a bit late into their first lecture, but it's okay. There's probably a line up outside. So no, thanks everyone for the intros. As I said, we're going to have a conversation today. One of the big things that I hope you get a better sense of is essentially our commitment to you as an organization, and how we're going to unpack that is essentially talk about the experience that we think you should have and hope that you do have during your time at Milpark. And that's really important for us. Obviously, we're an online institution, and part of today is also going to be unpacking what we mean by online and how we think about that. Sessions like this are really important for us because although we're online, we deeply believe in having you feel part of a community. And I suppose today's the first of many touch points that I hope you have with the institution. So I'm going to start off with a first set of questions. And the first one, let me give some context. I suppose all of us in this call, Ron touched on the fact that he once was a student. And I think it's safe to say everyone in the call once was a student and has gone through different types of learning throughout their lives. And you obviously are now continuing your learning journey with us as an institution. And why I say that is that we've all had different experiences of learning, and we probably all think about learning in different ways. And so my first question to Andrew is orientated around that. And it's, how do we want students of Milpark to experience learning differently here at Milpark? And why I say differently is we genuinely believe as an online institution, we want you to experience learning differently. So Andrew, when you think about that and how students should experience a different experience at Milpark, what jumps out at you? What are the first thoughts that come to mind?
Yeah, I think, obviously to some degree I'm a bit biased, but there is something quite beautiful in what we're trying to do at Milpark. And it's really important for you to understand sort of the differences behind how we see and think about education here than what you might have experienced in different environments over the course of your life. So for me, I think the first thing is that we don't see education as just content or information or teaching you something. Really, it's about us creating student journeys. So one of the big things I often use in terms of my language is that, we're not here to give you a certificate only. We're here to take you on a series of hopefully very intentionally designed moments that over the journey of your education with us will help hopefully start to transform who you are. and not just pat you on the back and sort of go through a few tests and give you a certificate at the end of the day. And so for me, you know, as those journeys unfold, and you know you go through them and they challenge you and they shape you, we need to be available to you to provide sort of very high levels of support so that you feel safe, that you feel like you can take on these sort of tricky moments. And then ultimately, I think what's really important for me, if we're doing our job right at Milpark, you should leave Milpark, or at least during the course of a season with Milpark, you should feel sort of a much stronger sense in self-belief. Like you should leave Milpark going, you know, I really believe more in myself and my ability to do bigger things. And so for me, that's like really important for us in terms of the experience that you're going to have at Milpark.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. I know you could have definitely brought up a few more things there, but I think those are definitely one of the two big ones. Marlies, anything you want to add to that in terms of how students should experience us potentially different to what they've experienced in the past that Andrew didn't mention?
Yeah, I think what is very interesting in us being online and what we are trying to achieve is that for many people, online may mean that there's quite a bit of a distance between yourselves and the other people studying with you. But we have been very intentional in creating opportunities for you to learn with others, because we believe that we learn best when we learn with others, because it shapes who we are, it shapes our view of the world. And therefore, that is specifically one of the things that we have thought about very carefully. And we definitely invite you to participate in those moments, because you have a choice in order to participate in those. So we do not only see the technical content as important, but we basically use the technical content to facilitate opportunities for us to achieve certain outcomes in who we would like for you to become as students. And so, Leon, I think that is one of the things that I just wanted to mention that stands out from my perspective.
And I think, Leon, I think it's actually quite interesting because most people see online education as almost just this technology-heavy approach to teaching and learning, when our philosophy is really to use the technology to facilitate human-centric experiences. We deeply believe that learning is personal, and we deeply believe that learning is about how you shape who you are, and that can only be done in communities of learning with other people, in environments that are safe, with touch points with other people that can, you know, just support you during those moments that you need to go through. And I think from my side is that most people paint us with a brush that says, oh yeah, they're online, they're just going to use technology, you know, AI is going to replace all their facilitators, where that's actually fundamentally disconnected to how we see education. And people often find that quite interesting, that there's this tension between using technology, but using it in a way that creates more human-centric experiences.
Yeah. No, thanks. Thanks to you both. I think there's some key points there. And I suppose if there's one thing you can feel comfortable about as a student is that you're joining, although we're online, that you should feel connected both to the institution and to your class and to your classmates over your period at Milpark. And I suppose just a call to action to all of you is get involved and participate. I suppose the one risk with online is it's very easy to sort of remove yourself from the activities of active learning. But we've tried to be intentional about creating lots of opportunities for you to actually participate and engage. And so I think that's something to be excited about as you embark on the year ahead. I'm going to move on to the next question, slightly connected, and I'm just going to, again, paint it up with some context from my side. But when we talk about the Milpark reason for being, so I suppose in terms of the theory of business, one would talk about your vision. At Milpark, we use a framing around why do we exist as an institution, and it talks to essentially there's quite a long statement there, so I'm not going to repeat it all, but we talk to unlocking human potential, and it's one of those things we mention and we remind ourselves of our employees all the time. You know, we're all here trying to unlock human potential, and by unlocking human potential through education, we're going to also help unlock what we believe to be the potential of South Africa. And it's something that really gets us all excited, especially when it works hard. Sometimes I say to our employees, you know, remember, we're here doing meaningful work that's going to impact people's lives. And I think that's something we get excited about. We don't take lightly. In other words, it's a big responsibility we carry, and we carry that very carefully. But just know that it's something we take very seriously. So, Andrew, when you think about that statement, unlocking human potential, what comes to mind for you?
Yes, I think, I mean, maybe just to expand a little bit, our vision here at Milpark is we believe we can empower people to become more than they dared imagine, unlocking their potential to help shape our collective future. So for me, this idea of unlocking potential is important, but I think what people miss is that the potential in that statement, the potential already exists in you. We're unlocking what already exists in you. And so there's a recognition of the fact that you have your potential, and it's the moments and the experiences that we are going to catalyze and put you through that ultimately is going to release that potential that exists inside of you. So there's nothing inherently special in what we carry as an institution insofar as something we can give you that doesn't already exist within you. I think the main thing for me is realizing that you're responsible for going on these journeys with us, with the express goal of, almost being that sort of moment where we're going to empower you to change and to then free up what really exists within you. And for me, that's really important because part of your ability to step into your future is connected to self-belief and a confidence that's born out by this unlocking of this potential, but also this other element of our vision, which is, you believing that you can be more than you dared imagined. And that's this idea that once you're here, you're going to see, oh, you know what, I can do this. I actually can. I never thought I could, but now I can. And for me, if we can do that systematically as a business, we're going to set up this country. I'm going to set up you guys for the moments that you're going to go and step out into.
Thanks, Andrew. Anyone else on the panel want to add to some of the ideas Andrew shared there?
I think, Leon, what is one of the interesting things for me in what Andrew just mentioned in terms of how people see themselves and the potential that they hold is what we often find is, and that's also the enabling environment that we provide, is for people to also question what they thought they want to become or needed to become because they were set on a certain path. And through journeying with us, they realize actually that, that they are actually supposed to become something very different than what they thought they had to. And that shift that we sometimes see with our students, and I think that is what a learning journey at Milpark is also about, is to opening yourself up to those opportunities of the opportunity set, basically, that you hold as an individual.
Yeah, yeah. No, for sure. And I suppose if there's a picture to paint in your minds, especially if you're new to the institution or you're returning, irrespective of where you are, we've got the academic year ahead, is that you're about to embark on a journey with us. We don't see education as transactional. We're about to go essentially through an experience that we hope will fundamentally change you. And to be honest, we're only really doing our jobs if you have been fundamentally changed as a person, whether that's how you think about yourself, the world, what you're going to aspire to, or the value that you can bring. And so know that that's something we again take seriously and are trying to achieve. So Marilise, maybe just unpack that a bit more. I mean, when we talk about the journey, if you had to articulate what we hope a student becomes at the end of their journey with Milpark, how would you articulate that? I know we've got things called graduate attributes, and they're probably quite accessible on the website, but if there's any specific ones you want to mention or just talk to how we've thought about those, that would be useful.
Yeah, thank you, Leon. I think that was an interesting one for me that connects with what Andrew said in his previous response around what we see as our vision to help shape our collective future. And I think if we see then our students, all of you having the potential within you and us just helping you shape in order to shape our collective future, then we needed to sit very carefully, and that's what we've done, to think about how do we want our students to think? How do we want our students to approach problems? I think we deeply connect as Milpark with our South African origins, knowing that we are on the African continent and that we have unique problems to solve. And so that made us think about how do we want our students to think? How do we want our students to see the world? And how do we want our students to engage with others in the world? And I think Andrew also touched on a point which we elevate and what we want to bring across to our students. We know that the business world today is digital, it is online, but it is still human-centric. It is still all about understanding each other, being able to connect deeply with one another, and therefore that human first but digitally fluent comes through very strongly in what we believe. The South African inspiration, but we believe that you as our students, whether you are now on this, in South Africa, or whether you're staying abroad or in another country, that doesn't matter, but you have potential to impact on a global front. So that's where there will be content that's both not very South African unique, but that will enable you to play in a global world. And then, of course, how we engage with one another speaks very much about how we contribute, how we approach just collaboration with each other, understanding one another slightly better. How do we think about the world speaks to how do we how are we creative in solving problems? But of course, in South Africa, we must also be very resilient, and that we can say we have as a South African people. And then I think one of the last things that truly resonates with all of us is that we want through this journey with Milpark that you find you are honing yourself, your skills, you're finding yourself, your identity, what you want to become. You are learning, of course, technical skills, etc. And we call that excellence within. But ultimately, we believe that it's not only for the benefit of yourself, but it should play out in how you engage in the workplace, whether you're an entrepreneur or in a business, whether you're in a management or a leadership role, that doesn't matter. And then also into the community. Like Andrew said, at the end of the day, it is for the betterment also of our country or for the country where you are and where you play a role. So I think, Leon, that's how I see it playing out. And that's just from my side how we thought about it.
I think for me, Leon, these graduate attributes for students, just to understand it a bit better, we often talk about why higher education is much more than just a sum of short courses. I mean, you could logically ask yourself, well, if I can, just get these 10 modules, surely if I just get 10 modules, I get the equivalent of a degree or an accredited program. But there's something much more important about how we connect those modules together and how we stitch what we often call meta or overarching learning, not just the content learning in the modules, but how you learn and grow as a person while navigating through those modules. And so for me, these graduate attributes that Marie's been referring to is us intentionally stitching together a meta framework for how you're going to learn and grow and become something that's going to set you up more than just the content itself. And as Marie's alluded to, the content is the vehicle, and we know you need to have sort of a certain amount of information and learning to achieve the goals on your various programs, but it's also the vehicle that we're going to use as the way of creating these experiences to shape you. And so for me, and I think this is quite important for students to understand, and if I was to give advice well, to my children or as anyone that's setting out to study, there are two paths to studying. On the one hand, you can like skim along the surface, do as little as possible, hopefully pass your tests and exams, stack it all together, get a degree and move on. And yeah, you probably might have a degree at the end and you have a certificate and something's put on your CV. But the problem is that that's all supposed to represent some underlying learning or some underlying change that has happened within you. And if you've just skimmed along the surface, right, you've avoided essentially the harder, more challenging shaping moments that we've designed within the program. And I suppose I would encourage students to recognize this because, we're not a control system. We're not here to force you to go through every single moment. Yeah, we have to test you and there's assessments, various types of assessments on the program. But ultimately, you need to embrace the learning journey as thoroughly as you can for you to go through those experiences, to be reshaped and to grow. And if you keep just choosing the easier choice, you end up actually choosing away from the learning that we've designed, which means you aren't really set up to be front-footed going into the world of work, going into the moments that these areas that you're going to be going into post us. And so for me, I just want students to understand that that's a personal choice that everyone gets to make by themselves in their room with their computer or wherever they're learning. We can't force that choice on you, but if you keep choosing a choice that doesn't recognize the design and the intentionality, you're actually choosing against the learning that's been put there. And I think there's a segue there that speaks to another thing that I think students need to understand, which is that education or learning, by definition, is supposed to be uncomfortable and hard. That's literally the process of learning. You need to feel uncomfortable. And so on the one extreme, it's so hard that you disconnect and this is impossible. And then our responsibility is to support you and to help unlock you so that you can move forward and not get stuck. But the other part is that if you keep avoiding hard things, you never learn. And so the feeling of something being uncomfortable or hard is not a sign that you are failing, or it's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's actually a sign that you're stepping into the learning. And for every student, it's going to come down to a moment of, what am I going to do with that hard? Am I going to avoid it, or am I going to push through it and embrace it? And if you choose to consistently push through and embrace those moments, those series of hard things is going to shape who you are. And so for me, I encourage students to not feel like they're not good enough or they don't meet the bar when they feel something hard, to recognize that actually hard is normal. So maybe there's an element of just saying it's okay. Don't feel that's unusual. It's actually intentional. Don't disconnect from it. And then what are you going to do with it? Right? Push through, develop, shape, shift yourself. And if you can do that consistently, you'll become something more. And for me, that's something, again, we cannot control for. We can't say you must do this. We can only put the moments in front of you and hope and encourage you to take advantage of what the moments are.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, and I suppose in the world we live in at the moment, it's almost become easier than ever to avoid the uncomfortable nature of learning. Whether that's using AI as the obvious example, oh, I'll just ask the AI, it'll tell me what to do, and there's no actual genuine learning that takes place. As an institution, obviously, we've got to have this careful balance of putting you through hard things, but at the same time, appropriately supporting you through that so that you're doing something hard, but you're also feeling supported through that journey. So maybe just touch on that a bit, Marilise, how we think about appropriately getting that balance right from an academic experience, pushing students to learn, but supporting them at the same time.
Yeah, thank you, Leon. I think what we have done is, and what we recognize is that the majority of you, if not all of you, work as well as having to balance out life, work, etc., your family. That is also very important. And one of the first things that we have tried to do is to take away some of the cognitive load that comes just with planning and scheduling your studies. So irrespective on the program that you're at or the way in which it is facilitated, there will be a way in which we have broken down the study content for you into smaller pieces. It may on the one end of the spectrum just be like a study plan that we have provided you with, that provide you with a cadence, but on a lot of our programs, it's actually broken down into a weekly or a 2-week cadence that makes it easier for you to also work through the study content and the other content as well. So that speaks for me to one example of how we have been intentional in trying to break down the content for you to support you academically. There's also more than just one assessment that helps you to get through it. There are practice questions on a weekly basis or a fortnightly basis that you can deal with, and certain activities that you can get involved in. But what we have recognized as well is that from our side, what we are trying to do is to keep you engaged through a support structure that we have. And we have the role in Milpark that we refer to as the program manager. So you'll also engage with the program manager for your program on a regular basis, who supports the lecturer on your module or the lecturers on your module to ensure that you stay engaged, to ensure that you participate in the discussions, that you participate in the online tests and the like assignments, etc. But then we also have a wrapper, Leon. I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or if we'll come back to it. That's maybe just broader than the academic support.
Yeah, touch on it. Yeah.
Sure.
Just goes with the flow.
That's good. Yes. So we recognize that it's actually much more than the academic support that we need to provide for our students. And so Leanne referred to it and alluded to it earlier. We have the Student Engagement Hub to support our students from an administrative perspective. And then we also have what we refer to as psychosocial support, where we have October Health that you can reach out to if you need support from just how do I plan my studies, how I think about my studies, or if you are maybe under pressure, how to balance work and studies and life, that you can reach out to on October Health in order to get some additional support. So we've tried to think about it as a wrapper of support and not only as academic support.
I think for us, I mean, we do our best. I mean, our responsibility is to do our damnedest to support you guys in the various. I mean, if you're going to put someone through hard things, right? You need to also be there to say, okay, we're here with you. We're going to support you. We're going to ensure that what you're going through isn't prohibitively hard. We're going to try and lower the barrier as much as possible. Obviously, going back to my previous conversation, where I was saying you need to still go through hard things, and so please don't avoid the hard things. But there's unnecessary hard, and it's our responsibility to do our best to eliminate the unnecessary hard things and to give planning and cadence to the way you go through these things. So for me, that's something. But I think also, I really want to impress on students this idea that I often just say to my students, don't let the train leave the station. there's a course, and one of the advantages to, let's say, going to an actual classroom is that you can't leave you can't, let the train leave the station, because you're going to the class and stuff's happening and there's a pacing and there's a speed. Online, if you're not careful, you can just let the class continue while you say to yourself, I'll catch that up, I'll catch that up, I'll catch that up. And I suppose you could catch up any individual week or any individual moment, but it stacks up very, very quickly. And then by the end of it, you're totally overwhelmed by the volume of catch up that needs to be done to get back on the train. That's point one. But secondly, learning is not the same if it's done in a collapsed way. In other words, even if you had the time to catch it all up last minute, it doesn't develop the same way in your mind. You need the time is a valuable part of the learning process, because your brain organizes in the background. You might not be overtly doing it, but you are building connections slowly and surely over time. And if you don't give yourself the time to let the information and the experiences develop and settle and connect in your brain, you actually are setting yourself up to not get the best education anyway. And again, you might pass the test, but you wouldn't have developed. And I know part of you is thinking, oh, I just want to pass the test. But the reality is you don't really just want to pass the test, because you want this to become something that sets you up for something else, right? And if this is just literally about passing tests and all you wanted was to pass a test, then this is a very expensive way of just passing tests. Ultimately, the goal here is that you are shaped, and you need to personally take responsibility for that. And if we can do that, then you're going to be able to set yourself up. So for me, don't let the train leave the station. Grab on. Even if you're running from behind and you've got one hand holding on the tail of the train, it doesn't matter. Just don't let go of the train. Because the minute they let go of the train, it becomes so difficult to get back onto that train. And so for me, that's like my advice to students: just try your best to stay on the train. And we do our best to pace and be consistent and to show you how it's going to happen. And Marilise was giving you all the examples of how we design it so that you can feel like there is a movement, but just make sure you stay up with that movement.
Yeah.
Leonis, if I can quickly also add, I know we're not going to go into the detail, but if you feel that you are losing touch a little bit with that train, please do reach out to us sooner rather than later. And there are different ways. We have the Collaborate channel. You can book a consult with your lecturer. You can reach out to us and the academic team, because I'm now specifically referring to support in the module, the academic support. We are here to support you. So speak earlier rather than later.
Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning, just something that comes to mind to me is make sure you take the time to and using Andrew's analogy of the train, onboard yourself to the train. I mean, obviously you're participating today, and that's great. We're onboarding you at a very high level, institutional level. But every module and every qualification, take the time just to wrap your head around, especially if you're new to Milpark. How does Milpark work? Where do I get support? When is my first session going to start? When are my first exams? Well, we often find students, they just want to start and get going, but they avoid the just 1 or 2 hours of onboarding yourself into the institution. I joke because my wife always says, I'll use a very bad analogy, but if I get a new vacuum cleaner at home, I just try and construct the thing and plug it in, and I want to use it straight away. I never take the time to read the user manual, and there's often quite useful information in the user manual about how to set it up properly before you actually get going with the work. So as an institution, we try to make your onboarding into the institution as easy as possible, but it's still going to require you to read through some information, joining sessions like today. We've got various sessions throughout the O week that are coming up, but also know at a school and qualification and module level, there's various types of onboarding that's important for you to spend some time going through.
There's a question here that's probably worth answering, which is connected to if you're used to a contact learning environment, how would you navigate the transition? And there's no one answer for everybody. I think let's start by just saying, and one of the advantages of online learning, and I think it's important to say that online learning is not the same as distance learning, and it's not the same as traditional contact learning as you would imagine it. It's actually in our belief, well, we've designed it a particular way, so that's how we see online learning, and not every institution designs online learning in the same way. But we build our online learning with trying to grab the best of both worlds. So we definitely have inherent cadence, or what we mean by cadence is a pacing to the course, because part of what it means to well, be part of a community is to be with your class as the course unfolds and to feel that movement. Because if there is no movement and you just get given a whole bunch of stuff to go and do by yourself, let's say PDFs, and you must go read these PDFs, and at the end of the course, you're going to have a test, and there's no natural movement and no pacing, then you'll feel very overwhelmed. So we do have all those things built in. And I think for me, that's where there's an advantage to online, and that those things are very explicitly in front of you using our LMS, the Canvas learning management system. You will see that designed into the teaching and learning. And so there's part of that is that just being aware, make Canvas your baby. Like, you need to see that as your learning environment, and you need to familiarize yourself with it. And that's your source of truth in terms of where education is happening. And so spend your time there and don't get overwhelmed by all the things on the side. Focus on the learning management system as your source of truth. And then, the other things that you can do, which is find people in the class, build relationships, be part of the communities that are there, because they will help you in terms of just pacing and cadence and motivation. And then reach out to us and our annual lecturers. They're available, we're available. And I think that all plays a role in strengthening the online learning environment. But you do need a discipline, as all education, and you do need to have routines, just like all education. And so for me, if you build those things, I don't think you'll necessarily feel that our online education is fundamentally dissimilar to a contact learning experience. There won't be many lecturers. We've got designed asynchronous moments. But that's because it frees us to be able to do other types of moments with the class. And so for me, I think that's an advantage in a lot of ways. And also doesn't fix the time where you have to be there for those moments. Not always. There are some sessions that you need to attend. But again, even if you don't attend them, they're recorded, which means you can get access to them. So I think there are a lot of tools and opportunities that make up for what you might perceive as the loss when you're leaving a contact learning environment. And a lot of the feedback we get from our students is actually they feel more supported in an environment like this than they ever felt in the contact learning environments they come from. So I don't think you should overtly be worried about the environment shift by itself being the reason for you struggling in terms of the difference between contact and online education.
Just quickly, if you don't mind, gentlemen, there's a question from Monique in the Q&A, and I think it speaks to what Andrew was speaking about in terms of tools. Monique is wanting to know, with more universities now openly accepting AI tools as part of academic work, how do we see AI as a challenge to the new way of learning? And do we think it enhances critical thinking and accessibility, or does it risk undermining traditional skills and independent thought? Marlies, maybe you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'm happy to start, but I'm sure that all of you can add to it, because it's something that we discuss so often. And I think what we recognize is that, of course, AI is challenging us to think differently, maybe from an assessment perspective. All higher education institutions need to think about it. But our starting point is to say that we want to prepare our students also for the world of work, whether it's the contemporary world of work or the future world of work. So that's on the one hand what is important to us. But Andrew mentioned some of it earlier as well. We know that in learning there are certain parts to learning that becomes embedded in who we are, how we think about the world as humans, and which enable us then to form patterns and discern certain things, etc. in future. So we definitely see AI as an enabler in all of this. And we are thinking very intentional about how do we need to actively bring it into the classroom, actively bring it in how you engage with your content, what does it mean for the qualifications where you study, and how it shapes and impacts the industries for the different qualifications that we speak to. But that is something that we definitely are thinking about a lot. I'm going to stop there because I'm sure some of the other panel members also wants to add.
Just quick segue, just to say that, guys, there are a lot of course specific or issue specific questions coming up in the chat. We are noting them in terms of our teams noting them in the background. It's not appropriate for us to respond to them here because this is a Milpark institution conversation, and I can't solve for specific. Well, I didn't have the information for specific issues that are coming up on the chat. So it's not to say we're ignoring those in the chat. It's just we can't respond to sort of questions that are not contextual for the overall conversation. And so in the background here, our team's jotting down your questions and we'll get back to you. So just bear that in mind. So we're not ignoring what's going on in the chat here. Maybe just, my 2 cents, AI is a tricky one, and everyone's, it's disrupting a lot. We know that. There's no clear answers as to the best way to go about this. And so I think We're all being disrupted by AI in different forms. From an educational perspective, I think there is a real risk that AI, as it stands, essentially, as it stands in the education as it stands, removes the opportunity to go through those hard moments. So you think to yourself, again, let's go back to a simple analogy. Let's say you're doing a psychology essay, right? Is the value in having a psychology essay created, or is it the process of grappling with those ideas? And now AI, if you just say AI create a psychology essay that's of a passable grade and it does it, then there's been no learning. I mean, you prompted the AI. On the other extreme, doing the work yourself, that shapes you and forces you, organizes your thoughts, organizes your ideas. You need to decide what must be in and what mustn't be in. So you've done a lot of sort of work, not just in the content of that psychology essay, in my example, but in terms of organizing the information and making judgment calls as to what's appropriate information, what's not appropriate information for the context within the constraints. Maybe it's a 1,000-word essay and you have to constrain it, and that forces a constraint and forces you to think through different things when it comes to developing. So those skills are all outside of just simply having a psychology essay that's produced. And then there's a midway ground. The midway ground is the ground we're not clear on, which is maybe you can do a psychology essay that allows you to use AI in some ways, but then, still allows you to go through these learning moments and develop those skills. And I think we're figuring all that out. And so we are in our own journey. We're not naive to AI, and we are engaging with the use of AI and how it's going to inform our teaching and learning. And it's embedded in a lot of what we do. But I think what is valuable and worth saying is that we believe in developing human potential here, which means in some ways we need to force non-AI use for the sake of developing human potential, even if we know that AI can get that answer in 5 seconds, because we need you to be able to go through the moments yourself in figuring it out, so that you can ultimately use AI more responsibly later in a way that maybe leapfrogs you, but you still have the context to how to think about the AI. And so, when you're going through the learning journey and you're thinking in your head, I'm not allowed to use AI. If I could just use AI to be quicker, well, just go back to my statements in the beginning saying maybe the goal wasn't just to have the outcome. Maybe the goal was for the journey of how you developed to get to that outcome. And that's more important than just having a clean, good outcome, And so just bear that in mind as you navigate our programs. So we are thinking about AI and we are incorporating it. But hopefully that gives you some context in terms of how AI is impacting things in our world. And again, guys, thumbs ups would be good. Hey, you've got a react button at the top there. So you can, it's very awkward me talking literally back to my Exco.
Shame, I see, and everyone sticks their hand up then by mistake. I keep saying that's a Microsoft fault. They need to separate the two.
Yeah.
No, but thanks. Some good points there on AI. I think I want to go into my next question. We've kind of touched on this, but I think it's worth emphasizing a bit more. I think big picture, obviously, we're embarking on a journey together, and we're entering into essentially a relationship where we are committing to taking you through an experience from an education perspective. But we're also asking for some commitments from your side as a student. And so, Marilise, I think we've touched on a couple, definitely not all, of our responsibilities as an institution. One being we want people to genuinely feel changed, feel part of a journey and an experience. We are working at trying to support you, but while also asking you to do hard things. I think there's some key themes we've touched on there. But from a student perspective, what are we asking of our students in terms of them entering into this relationship with us? What are some of the key things that come to mind for you?
I think one of the big things, and I saw the chat in the chat there, a question around the live classes as well, and whether classes will be recorded, etc. And it made me also think about the specific question that you asked, Leon, around what do we ask our students to do? How do we want our students to engage? And I think one of the big things is that we want you to understand that for us, this is more than just, like Andrew said, getting the certificate at the end. So we invite you to participate. Of course, we recognize that it's not all the time possible for you to participate in everything. For example, the question around what if I miss a class, is it recorded, etc. I think one of the things that we ask of you when you come to a class specifically that is live is that you come to the class ready to participate. We do not see those moments, for example, in class where the lecturer just share information and you sit there and you listen. So we want you as a student to come with your views, your perspectives, and then also to come share in a class. That's just one illustration. Again, I think that what is important. What we also ask of you to do is to take the time to see how your studies are going to fit in with your life and your work. So find a routine. We want you to partake, of course, in all of the activities. We invite you to reach out to us when you need help. But we also, so there is also responsibility for me in there, Leon, which I can maybe mention, is that we want you to know when you are struggling and you need to reach out to others for support. That support may not necessarily be from us. So we have had a slight shift also over the past few years, and you would have seen it on your, if it's the first time that you're on Canvas now this year, you would have seen that we have a collaborate channel, and we invite you to ask questions there, and we invite other students to answer and to help. So we invite you to study also with others and learn with others, so that we break this, that it's the lecturer with all of the information and the students come to receive. Yes, we will provide you with the technical information and the cadence that you need to fit within it, but we also recognize that the other students studying with you, that are sitting with you in the class, they also bring knowledge and experience and create a richer experience. So another thing, help each other out. We have the different platforms that you will see over the next week as well. You will be exposed to some of the platforms for your qualification. Somebody mentioned there will be qualification specific induction sessions. Join those to learn how it works on your qualification and support one another in those channels that we put together for you. Those are some of the things that I can mention, but open to others to add.
I would make
Anything
a comment.
else, Andrew?
So from the dilemma is that, and there's a lot of comments around everyone feeling a little bit anxious and nervous about this. And I think, there is an element of like anxiety around the unknown. If you're not familiar with stuff and it's new and, you've never done online and, you now open up your course page and there's all this information to get your head around and it's daunting. I get that. And I think that's real. And I think you mustn't dismiss that. But that's largely a fact of not yet having gone through and gotten your head around it. So this is not like an infinite thing that you're trying to get your head around. It's a course, it's an online page. If you've got 2 courses or 3 courses, 3 of them that you can go and familiarize yourself with, it's really worth doing that. Invest the time in you don't realize, guys, how much anxiety you're carrying because you haven't got your head around the starting point around what's happening. So, step 1, orientate yourself properly. But that includes, as Leon was alluding to, read the documents, understand what's happening. We are very intentional in why we put things in front of you. If we say do a mock test, do the mock test, because doing the mock test, even though it might be a 5-minute exercise, it will make you feel comfortable about understanding how the tests are going to work in your environment, right? Not doing the mock test and then going, I'll do it later, I'll do it later, I'll do it later. And then suddenly a test arrives, you haven't done the mock test. Now that you're carrying the anxiety of not having familiarized yourself into the same moment of the testing moment. And so we do a lot of work in terms of trying to figure out how to orientate you as best we can. And I'll say this, we're always open for constructive feedback. So if there's things we can improve on, let us know, we'll improve. But our whole goal is to try and make this daunting online thing that everyone is anxious about in their head as small and simple as possible. But there's only so much we can do there, and the rest you need to participate with in terms of, just going through this moments yourself, So credit to you guys coming to this O week. I know it's a lot of time commitment to be here, but part of it is understanding and orientating yourself. You now know what we're trying to achieve. You now know where our institutional priorities are. You now understand how you should experience the course. Those things seem trivial, who cares? Not important for my course, but they set you up in terms of feeling more confident about how you're stepping into the various moments that you're stepping into. So I encourage you to do the most you can to orientate yourself as best you can, and then, give us feedback. If you feel like we're dropping the ball, let us know. This is a human thing. We all are humans trying to make these experiences as well as we can.
No, good. Thank you. I see there are any other questions, Leanne? I'm trying to keep track, but anything worth specifically touching on that's coming up?
Leon, quite specific questions, so we're noting those on the side. Nothing general at the moment.
Okay.
So
great.
Okay. Something else I'm going to say as a teacher at heart here. A lot of your anxiety, what's really important, people that have struggled with learning, you need to ask yourself why. You need to get context, right? So you need to know, you can't just learn stuff without it being fitting in a context. And so a lot of what I feel like is when you go through these learning moments, keep ensuring that you're building the bigger picture of your understanding, so that when you want to hang the content, you're hanging it into a place that exists because you're building the overarching understanding. If you go in and you're just trying to grab stuff and throw it in your brain, like, oh, that's new information, throw it in, new info, you don't know where it fits, you don't know how it fits together, then you're going to get overwhelmed very quickly, because all these jumbled up things don't have a natural home, but yet you should know them. But everything that is taught and everything in this world fits within a context. And if you ensure that you focus on trying to understand the context, not just the underlying stuff, again, it goes back to don't leave things to the last minute, because if you want to shape the context, you need the time to build the context. But the more you focus on building the context, the easier it is to hang the underlying stuff. But students think, I just need to know these 10 things, and if I just learn these 10 things, I'll be fine. But you'll never learn those 10 things if you can't place those 10 things where they should appropriately hang, in terms of my analogy. And so, for those people that are commenting around the anxiety going forward, the history of not being comfortable with learning, I would hope in an environment where you feel safe, because we're authentic, because you shouldn't feel judged for not having all the answers. You can ask questions and collaborate. If you do that, there's an ability there's a freeing that comes from that. But the fear of, I'm not good enough, I don't measure up, I don't have the answers, I'm just going to fail. That's a narrative that you carry that we need a break. And that's connected to being in a context that I'm hoping will provide for you, which is a safe learning environment, intentionally designed and thought through, with journeys that are appropriate, that as you go through them, you'll understand the context, you'll understand why we're doing what we do, and therefore the learning itself becomes easier and more absorbable for you to do. That's kind of the big story here.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add to that is these things take time. And the intention, you're not going to join one session or read one document and suddenly feel comfortable and ready to learn. You've got to take the baby steps of, if you're new to the institution, it's normal to feel daunted, a bit overwhelmed, but the goal is that over time you feel more and more comfortable, as opposed to less and less comfortable. So just take it a day at a time. It's going to take time. I mean, I remember reflecting on my journey as a student, and I did contact learning. You arrive on campus the first day and everything's overwhelming. And sometimes, it takes a couple of weeks, if not months, to really find your momentum and your feet and the cadence of how things work within this new environment. So give yourself some grace, be intentional and put in effort. We as an institution, like Andrew said, we're trying to remove all the unnecessary hardness. But there is still going to be some hardness, and that includes some hardness in onboarding yourself and orientating yourself around how things work. And then you're going to start the hardness of actually grappling with your content and these concepts that you're going to be learning about. But take one step at a time, be intentional, try not panic, remain calm, and know that we're doing our best to make you feel supported and hopefully feel more and more comfortable over time, while you're part of Milpark. Okay, so I'm going to slowly bring the session to a close. I'm going to leave it with one closing question that I'm going to pass around the panel. And I'm going to start with Ron. He hasn't had a chance to comment today, but that's fine. As marketing officer, I'm going to say, if there's one thing that students say about Milpark and the experience at Milpark when they graduate, what would that one thing be? And at the start of the session, I'll just say that Andrew told me I'm not allowed to say that. You can't say ask for one thing. Guess what? I'm asking for one thing. So what was the one thing you want students to say about the experience at Milpark when they graduate?
Yeah, Leon, it's a great question. And I think it's something we talk about a lot. Like for me, really important that students talk about the change in themselves. Right? So if a student can say, I left here with more self-confidence and I left here feeling a little bit braver, regardless of whether I got the certificate at the end, actually that's what kind of would make me really happy.
Great. Thank you. Marlies, what would you say?
Sure. This is now tough. Thank you, Leon, for putting us on the spot here.
I'm creating, what did we say, the restriction that students sometimes face when they're asked to answer something.
Well, I think one of the things that stands out for me is just seeing the world different than what you may have when you started on this journey, and understanding your impact, whether it's in the business, in the community that you're in. And I think that's what I want our students to take away.
Great, thank you. Leanne, what would be your one thing?
I think Marlies stole my one thing, and that was impact. Is that when our students leave us, that they feel they can make a significant impact and change to our situation in the country and to others and their lives.
Thank you. Andrew?
So what I would like them to say about Milpark, that we were more than just an institution, that we cared for them, that they felt seen, and that they, because of that, they are willing to be brave and to jump into things and become more. And that.
Perfect. If I had to say, well, I mean, I liked everyone else's. I had to go last, which is sometimes the hardest. So let me say something a bit different. I'd like to say that you left Milpark and you made some friends along the way. And maybe that wouldn't be something you expected because you're joining an online institution, but I believe you can make some friends, and that you leave saying, hey, I made that a really good friend at Milpark, and that made me feel part of a community. So that would be my one thing. I want to draw the session to a close. We've got a couple more minutes. So if there are any other questions, now's your time. Oh, sorry, you can ask them now. As I said, we might not answer them now, but someone will see it and either get back to you directly or figure out that we need to clarify something or get back to someone on something. So please feel free to pop it in the chat now. If not, thank you very much for joining today. As I said, welcome to Milpark. Please be on the lookout for the rest of the O week. There's lots of different sessions, all touching on different aspects that are important to wrap your head around as you embark on your journey with us or continue your journey with us. And as I said, it's a privilege to have you part of our institution. We look forward to appropriately challenging you, but also appropriately supporting you along the way. So thank you for your time today, and keep well.
Cheers, everybody. It's really good to have you all here.